Hello YouTube, this is Augustus Lodge, and I'm here to show the viewers of my credentials. For me, it's my generational credentials. I'm in part of the 13th generation, or Generation X, born from 1963 to 83, which is a solid 30 years. And our generation got extended. Usually an average generation is 22 years. But I consider my generation to extend from this portion to that portion, 30 years. And there's certain aspects of the generation. And my credentials are, I looked at this book called the Howe, which is Eastern philosophy based in Japan. And it's all about the Book of the Samurai. And I've read through it. And it was mostly preaching to the choir, the voice of the book, in my to my personality. And I've always operated like this, to live every day like it's your last, to make every day count. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't be here speaking to you today, if I wasn't careful in that aspect. To keep myself alive, primary. And I've had good experience. Compared to other generations, always my generation, the reactive generation, has lived 5 lifetimes compared to the other generations. And I don't have the book out with me at the moment, but it's a book on generations, and this certain scholar has scheduled into 4 generation types. There is the Civic, the Adaptive, the Reactive, and the self-assured, which is the boomer generation. The Civic generation is the greatest generation. Right, I don't have the scholar's terminology down, but I will have it. And in the greatest generation, they're the Civic generation. And the whole aspect of why this works is that America is a crucible of social engineering. And if you don't realize that by your intuition and your experience, you're in a delusional state, and try to break free from that. You know, I have let loose with a lot of jargon, and I'll try to clarify that when it happens. But the whole part of it is there's a certain generations. In the Civic generation, the greatest generation of World War II was the Civic generation. After that was an adaptive generation, because the Civic generation was engineered to be the paragon of what a population can be. And World War II was engineered, and so was the population. The next generation is the adaptive generation. And there's never been an adaptive president elected to presidential office. The closest was Dukakis, and he was not elected. So there's been a generational skip with the boomers are in office now. But that's just the way the engineering goes, with the overt mainstream world that everybody sees. On top of that, the next generation after the adaptive was the boomer generation, or the self-assured generation, engineered as well. They were big on themselves and big on their role in the world. More of fact than any other generations. The Civic generation saw themselves as part of a bigger whole, as a component. The adaptive generation followed behind what the Civic generation, but weren't a part of it. And the boomer generation is a total other aspect of being self-assured to the point of having the hubris that's detrimental to the population. And that goes to the next generation of their spawn, the reactive generation, the 13th generation, which people were so into themselves that they neglected the new population, and they had to fend for themselves. It was like, let kids be kids. Kids are a deficit. Oh my gosh, these kids are driving me crazy. You've all heard these words. Reactive generation. That's my generation. But the thing about it is they expect a Civic generation to follow a reactive generation, but during the Civil War, it didn't correlate. there's a skip there, a generational skip. Thus the title of this video, the generational skip. And I don't expect to have another Civic generation. I expect another adaptive generation, but not to adapt to the Civic, but to the Reactive. So it'll be a shadow to the Reactive, but the difference is the inherent circumstance that the new generation, born after 1983, finds himself in. Very good for children, but they respect the generation before them, the Reactive, on a whole, that the component, being part of a component of something bigger, is missing. The same thing after the Civil War, after 9/11, it analogizes directly. Analogize. I want scholars there too. If there's an ethereal way to slap me across the face, go ahead. Analogize. Should be avoided, that word. But anyway, that's how it goes. The Civic generation, without the component of that structure that they're invested in, intuitively, which isn't there, they will adapt. We'll have another adaptive generation, but they won't be adapting to a Civic generation. They're adapting to my generation, which I'm saying right now is damaged. We are damaged. I know. I operate with the limitations, with the mindset that I'm a damaged person, and the whole society is damaged. And I have to operate through a contingency filter to compensate. And I'm one of the people, being a shaman as I am, and one thing about it is I'm only a junior shaman. There's no way I can even call myself a provost shaman yet, or even a master shaman. I just happen to have the skills of the shaman. There's no way I can convey them to anybody else. So there's no way I can take on a protege to teach what I know. It's not happening at this moment. Maybe later on in time, when I get older and better able to engage with the greater bulk of the population, maybe. But until then, I'm just going to have to deal with it, pretty much. But the whole point of this video is the generational skip. Scholars expected there to be another Civic generation, but the events of 9/11 and the way circumstances are leaded right now is that's not going to happen. We're going to have another adaptive generation. So they're hoping for this millennial generation to be the panacea for all human ills. I don't believe it to be happening. So that means we have to go through at least 22 years of this generation, and then next generation will go back from adaptive. There'll be another self-assured generation, really. So we'll have more boomers, a generation earlier than there would have been. So anyway, I study this stuff with social engineering and the aspect of being a shaman and tapping the human collective of minds. I'm very suspicious of my own aspect on things, so I'm willing to make a composite gathered from many corroborated sources and all directed by this kind of philosophy. So this is Augustus Larch. I'm only asking you to consider what I bring in this vlog. You're welcome.